In this episode, we talk about Congress leader Sonia Gandhi restricting access to Jawaharlal Nehru's private papers. We also talk about the Congress party's demand to increase the 50% cap on reservations. But first we talk about a village in Muradabad where the authorities demolished 6 houses belonging to a Muslim family accused of trying to abduct a 20-year-old Hindu woman from the same village. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. This case involves an interfaith couple in a village under Muradabad's Mudha Pandey police station. A 20-year-old woman from the Thakur community was in a relationship with a 24-year-old man from the village who belongs to the Muslim community.
So the sequence of event is when for the first time when family got to know about their relationship. Of course, the girl's family was not happy.
That's Indian Express's Dheeraj Mishra who has been reporting on the story for the paper.
And, a panchayat was called in the village and in a way a settlement was reached out where the man was asked not to contact the woman ever again and keep a distance from her. Later, after some time, she was married to another person it's a neighboring district in Sambhal. She was married last year in June 2023. After her marriage, both of them, they were in contact with each other.
And earlier this year in March, they eloped in the state of Rajasthan. Dheeraj says that they were discovered by the police a month later.
So when the woman for the first time she recorded her statement before the police, she spoke in favor of that man. And she said that she went to Rajasthan on her own will. But after very next day when she recorded her statement under 164 CRPC before the magistrate, she made a contradicting statement and she said that she was forcefully taken from her in-laws' house to Jodhpur in Rajasthan. And in a way she was forced and she was asked to change religion, and there are some other allegations as well, and she demanded action against the accused, including that 24-year-old man.
He says the man has now been charged with both abduction and loot.
So currently this whole case is being shown as a case of abduction. What happened in last week on Wednesday around 3 a.m. in the night, it is alleged that a group of people reached to the house of the 20-year-old girl, and in a way they had planned and they wanted to abduct that woman. And in that whole incident there was some firing incident and there was some scuffle which led to 3 persons injured from the woman's family, her father, mother and her brother.
These are the allegations that have been made by the family, and Dheeraj says that a total of 9 people have been booked so far in the case.
The police is saying that the main accused, he came along with a group of people armed with the country pistol and other thing, and they attacked on the family, and they were, in a way, they had made up their mind to abduct that woman at any cost.
But while investigations are still underway, local authorities started demolishing the homes of the accused last weekend.
So at least so far, 6 houses belonging to the 6 accused in this case has been demolished as an action in a way, quote unquote, to teach lessons to the accused. And 1 person has been arrested after the encounter. 1 more has been, a total of 2 arrests has been made so far. The case is still ongoing.
He says the case in many ways is disturbing as the young couple's right to choice appears to be severely undermined by the interference of family and the police.
In this case, a total of 6 policemen has also been suspended from 2 different districts. So the current SHO of Mudha Pandey police station, the former SHO of Mudha Pandey police station, 2 more sub-inspectors and 1 SHO from Behjoi police station and 1 sub-inspector from Behjoi police station. A total of 6 policemen has been suspended for their alleged laxity in dealing with this particular case. As of the sources said that there was a strong pressure from the top, from senior officials to arrest the accused as soon as possible. But because there were some clear proof that both of them were in a relationship, and even there is a Iqrar-nama also, which shows that both of them actually got married in May 2023. after which the woman was married to a man in Sambhal district. FIR has been registered against 9 people under section 366, which is a kidnapping section. There is a 307 attempt to murder, 364 robbery or dacoity with attempt to cause death or grievous hurt. So police is taking very stringent action not only against the accused, but they also took action against their own police official, alleging that appropriate action was not taken over the period of time, because this incident is not very new. It has been going for around last 2 years.
He says the current situation is that on one side, the entire family of the main accused is absconding, and on the other side, the family of the man the woman married later has refused to take her back.
Police is going on this abduction theory. They are saying that we will arrest the accused as soon as possible, and as a part of action, their houses has been demolished. 6 houses has been demolished so far.
And Dheeraj, could you talk about how this incident has affected the people living in this village? Because you write that before this, nothing controversial has happened there.
So this is also very concerning because the village from where the couples belong, it's a Hindu Thakur dominated village where around 95% of them are Hindus and only 5% population are Muslim. So what is happening after this incident, that there is a very strong presence of police in village on both the community. When we enter the village, the 2 roads goes on 2 different sides. One lead to the Hindu community, second one lead to the Muslim community. I found it's a very divided village, but locals were saying that we were living in harmony. There was no problem. And after this incident, especially there is a kind of fear in Muslim community. A number of people have left village thinking that there can be any action against them also. But police is guarding the village. They are there and to stop any kind of communal thing from happening. Yeah, so currently the situation of the village is not very good. But let's see, because I found that not everybody was targeting the whole community. Even when I talked to the sister of the 20-year-old woman, she said to me very clearly that एक के वजह से हम पूरे समाज को गलत नहीं बोल सकते हैं. So currently it has developed a mistrust between both the community, but there are also people who are trying to bridge the gap, and in a way they are in favor of resolving this whole problem.
And next we talk about the Prime Minister's Museum and Library, formerly known as the Nehru Museum and Library. For years, it has preserved private documents that once belonged to some of the most eminent personalities in the country, often donated by the relatives or close associates of these leaders. In fact, the private papers of former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, donated by Indira Gandhi, were among the first to be stored there. However, in 2008, Congress leader Sonia Gandhi reclaimed certain documents and restricted access to them. However, the PMML has now decided that it will not permit future donors to impose any such indefinite conditions on the documents. To understand what led Gandhi to impose restrictions and who all can access these private papers, we have Indian Express's Divya A joining us. Divya, can you begin by telling us what are these private papers that we're talking about? What kind of documents do they constitute?
Private papers, we are referring here to private collections. They're not essentially private papers. They're not, so to speak, private in nature. Since they belong to eminent personalities who could have been prime ministers, presidents, or other, constitutional office holders who may have had communication with others during their tenure, but the papers are not held by their office as such, but held by private individuals, which can be their families or friends or, private individual of any kind. So that particular set will be called private collection.
And if we talk specifically about India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, could you tell us what kind of private papers relate to him and who donated them to Prime Minister's Museum and Library?
As we know, the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, which is now Prime Minister's Museum and Library, but it was set up as a memorial for India's first Prime Minister. In fact, it was set up at Teen Murti campus, which was his residence as the Prime Minister till he passed away. So at that time, Jawaharlal Nehru Memorial Fund was the owner of all the private collections of Nehru papers, which comprised of communication before independence and also after independence. So those papers were donated to Nehru Memorial by Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi, who was, the legal owner of those papers at that time. And then consequently, after Indira Gandhi's death, Sonia Gandhi was the legal owner of those papers as the office bearer of the Jawaharlal Nehru Memorial Fund. So she also donated several sets of papers to the Nehru Memorial. But the donations were made on the condition that the Nehru Memorial is going to be the custodian of those papers. They are going to preserve and conserve the papers because they may be essential documents, important documents in many respects. But they won't be made accessible to people unless the donor agrees to it or, the donor's permission has been taken in advance.
And does the PMML have private papers of other leaders as well?
See, the Prime Minister's Museum and Library, in fact, has the biggest collection of private papers in the country. And they're very significant papers because they, in a way, give a lot of sense of India's modern history, pre-independence, immediately post-independence, how things worked, the first session, the constitution, how the eminent personalities of the time were talking to each other, what were they talking to each other, what were the conversations between, for instance, Sardar Patel and Nehru? What were the conversations between Mahatma Gandhi and Sardar Patel? What were the conversations during the Congress Working Committee meetings? So they are essentially very, very important papers, very significant papers. And there are a lot of such private collections which are part of the Nehru Memorial repository. In fact, pertaining to about 1,000 personalities of modern India. The prominent among them would be Mahatma Gandhi, of course, B.R. Ambedkar, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, Abul Kalam Azad, Bikaji Kama, Chaudhry Charan Singh. An appraisal of the life and times of these people may be very essential for the understanding of the country's modern history. In fact, that is why there have been repeated concerns that, all these papers should be openly accessible to researchers and scholars so that, anybody who wants to access any part of or understand any part of India's recent past can get a good sense through these official communication, the first-hand communication.
And Divya, at the moment, who all have access to these papers?
So Nehru Memorial or Prime Minister's Museum and Library, as it has now become since last year, it basically grants access to anybody who seeks access to that specific information or specific set of paper. But now what they are doing is they are trying to digitize the entire collection that they have, although it may be a long drawn process. It has been going on since last 2 years, hasn't completed yet. But now the effort is to digitize, put everything up online so that people can just pay like a nominal fee and access anything that they want to access. But till that happen, researchers and scholars have been primarily seeking access to those papers. But still, most papers, I would say, are now open to researchers and scholars in that respect. But still, there are several sets where donors have put conditions that, they are embargoed for as many years, or one set of the papers are on embargo. They have put several conditions, or till the subject of the communication is alive, general public can't be granted access. So there are a lot of different kinds of embargo and conditions that have been put up by donors at various times while donate those private collection papers.
And we understand that besides private papers, there is also another concept of personal papers. Could you talk about what is the difference between the two?
It's a good question. So private papers are essentially not personal in nature, that is official communication, but just by virtue of them being in the custody of private individuals, they are called private papers. Howsoever, personal papers would be the personal communication that an eminent personality would have had in his or her personal life. Maybe school certificates, maybe any such documents, maybe personal communication with friends and family, but essentially not of the nature that, it pertains to his office. So that is the difference between private papers and personal papers. Private collection is very similar to, in fact, official papers, but the official papers are owned by, ministry offices, while the private collection is also essentially official communication, but it is held by private individuals. So that is the only difference.
And talking about the donors of these private papers, what kind of control do they exercise on these documents? And does that control shift after they have been submitted to the PMML?
See, there are various kind of agreements that different kinds of donors would have had over the years while donating these papers to the PMML. So some have said that these papers have to be preserved by PMML but can't be made accessible to people, say, for 25 years. Some have set another conditions like for 30 years. Some have said that any time they have to be made accessible, permission has to be sought from the donor or his or her family. Some have said that till the lifetime of the subject, these papers can't be made public. So various kinds of donors have put various kinds of conditions, but essentially most donors, when they give these kind of papers, they make it okay to, make it accessible to researchers and scholars as such. But recently, there has been a greater demand to access all kinds of paper by all kinds of people, by researchers, by officials, by even common public who are wanting to know things, by young students who may want to have an understanding of the history on their own, by scholars. So those kind of things are happening. So these issues like really are becoming pertinent to address once and for all. In fact, in that respect, now Nehru Memorial or PMML is also thinking that they would put minimal embargo conditions on the papers. In fact, they would have not allow donors to have unconditional control on the kind of access that can be given to that communication.
And you mentioned in your story that Sonia Gandhi had barred public access to some of Nehru's private papers. So tell us about that and whether this has happened in other cases as well.
That has happened in other cases as well, but this is the most staggering and conspicuous case, also because the Nehru Memorial was set up in the memory of Nehru. So all his papers, whatever nature of papers, eventually came here. And, so it has almost all kinds of Nehru papers pertaining to his communication with all eminent personalities of the time, universities, college, institutions, even the British officials. So all of that comes into play. Also, in that context, while the papers were donated by Indira Gandhi first and then Sonia Gandhi later, they had put up the condition that, like I said, that you can't make them accessible to public unless a written permission is sought from the donor, which in that case would have been Sonia Gandhi. But what has really come out now is that in 2008, while we had Manmohan Singh government at the center and Nehru Memorial's running was basically taken care under the control of the UPA government, at that time, Sonia Gandhi had sent one person as an appointee and they had sorted out all the Nehru papers which were given to the Nehru Memorial at the time, and around 51 cartons full of Nehru papers were taken back from Nehru Memorial at Sonia Gandhi's behest. And these apparently pertain to communications which the family didn't want them to come into the public domain, would have been sensitive in nature, would have been controversial in nature. I mean, we don't know. We may not know also. But that is essentially what happened. So that has become a bone of contention, that how can a donor take back something that you have already donated to an institution? I mean, what is the right of the donor? In that context, there was a huge discussion at the recent annual general meeting of Nehru Memorial, and they even thought of taking a legal opinion. But as we understand, that legal opinion may not be very tenable in this case, because even as Sonia Gandhi took the papers away in 2008, the permission was also granted by those officials at the Nehru Memorial. So it's a bit of a tricky area.
Right, and we understand that the rest of Nehru's papers are being digitized and will be put online in the next 2 months. But Divya, are these documents donated to any other organization as well?
The Prime Minister's Museum would be having the largest private collection pertaining to individuals and personalities. But otherwise, all the official records and government papers on their own come to the National Archives, which is like the official record keeper of the country. That also functions like the Prime Minister's Museum. That also functions under the Ministry of Culture. So, as per the Public Record Act or the rules which govern these kind of official records, everything can be declassified after 25 to 30 years unless it pertains to any national security issues or any kind of sensitive information. So by default, everything comes to National Archives. But having said that, National Archives also gets a lot of private collections by virtue of donations by private donors, or even they even buy and acquire some kind of private papers, or even buy them from auctions. So they also have a set of private collections which may not be as big as what the Prime Minister's Museum may hold. But the difference with the National Archives is that when they are acquiring those papers, the condition is that everything will become accessible to people. Nothing can be embargoed or held back or, be subject to donors' permission. However, they do permit, but in very, very rare cases. That is not the norm, but just the exception.
And Divya, do we know how does the declassification of such documents happen in other countries?
Declassification of documents is essential and imperative for every nation to understand how things worked, how things came to be. So even in the US, we have such systems. We have the Library of Congress, where all the documents of the Congress leaders, Congress members, which is the equivalent of Parliament in the US, they come and they can be accessed by scholars and researchers in a similar way. So most countries have this system, and that is how you get a sense of history, even if like 25 years later or 30 years later, by virtue of researchers and scholars who are accessing these communications, writing books and articles, and also, other officials or any scholars who may want to understand something.
And in the end, we talk about the demand to increase the 50% cap on reservations. On Sunday, Congress General Secretary Jairam Ramesh said that the Parliament should pass a law to enable reservations to exceed the 50% cap a day after NDA constituent JDU demanded that the quota increase in Bihar be included in the 9th schedule of the Constitution. At a meeting of the Janata Dal United's National Executive on Saturday, the party expressed concern over a recent Patna High Court verdict striking down the Bihar government's decision to increase the quota for the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other backward classes to 65% from 50%. The JDU urged the BJP-led centre to put the state's law under the Constitution's 9th schedule to rule out its judicial review. In a post on X, Jairam Ramesh said that throughout the Lok Sabha poll campaign, the opposition party has been advocating for the inclusion of all state laws related to reservations for SCs, STs and other backward classes in the 9th schedule, as was done for a Tamil Nadu law in 1994. Here's Ramesh talking about this issue before the elections in May this year.
असली बात यह है कि क्या प्रधानमंत्री स्पष्टीकरण क्यों नहीं देते? क्या वो 50% सीमा जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने लगाया है एससी, एसटी और ओबीसी आरक्षण, दलित, आदिवासी और पिछड़े वर्गों के लिए आरक्षण को लेकर, क्या उसको हटाएंगे कि नहीं? हमने अपने न्याय पत्र में ये वादा किया है कि ये 50% आरक्षण की सीमा हम बढ़ाएंगे, क्योंकि एससी, एसटी, अनुसूचित जाति, अनुसूचित जनजाति और पिछड़े वर्गों को पूरा हक मिलना जरूरी है। इस पर प्रधानमंत्री ने अपनी चुप्पी नहीं तोड़ी है। सवाल यही है, राहुल जी ने बार बार यह सवाल उठाया है, हमारे कांग्रेस अध्यक्ष जी ने बार बार सवाल ये उठाया है, प्रधानमंत्री जी स्पष्ट कीजिए, क्या आप 50% की सीमा आप हटाएंगे कि नहीं? आज देखिए हमारे संविधान के 9वीं सूची में तमिलनाडु का कानून, तमिलनाडु एकमात्र राज्य है जिसका कानून, तमिलनाडु में 69% आरक्षण दिया गया है एससी, एसटी और ओबीसी के लिए, पर वो हमारे संविधान में, बाबा साहब अंबेडकर के संविधान में सुरक्षित है, क्योंकि उसको 9वीं सूची में लगाई गई है ताकि उसकी न्यायपालिकाओं की कोई समीक्षा ना हो सके। क्या प्रधानमंत्री ये वादा करेंगे कि सभी राज्यों के आरक्षण के कानून 9वीं सूची में लाएंगे? यही तो कांग्रेस कह रही है।
He said that the current limit of 50% is not explicitly mandated by the Constitution, but has been decided through various Supreme Court decisions. He added, quote, "Will the non-biological Prime Minister clear his stand? Our demand is that such a bill should be introduced in the next session of Parliament. JDU should not be limited to just passing resolutions." Unquote. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargav and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.